Go ahead.
Our mission, Helping Parents Heal, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. Helping Parents Heal goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non dogmatic way. Helping Parents Heal affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of HPH meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with our children who've passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinions of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. You're in for a treat tonight to hear Dr. Jeff speak, and thank you, Jeff, for being here.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Jeff, for being here. We're so thrilled. And again, I just want to remind everyone that Dr. Jeff is not only a former emergency room physician, he's also a Shining Light dad. He's an honorary board member of Helping Parents Heal. He's a best-selling author, and he's one of our keynote speakers for the conference, which has been the case for many years now. We are always so thrilled to have Dr. Jeff with us. Unfortunately, at the last conference, his daughter Rachel had just passed very soon before the conference was held, and that was a very difficult thing. He got up and did an incredible keynote address honoring Rachel when he was at the conference. And I just want to tell everyone that his website says, I exist to help souls heal. This has been the case forever. That's the only thing that I think is really important for him, is to be able to help others. And whether it be in an emergency room or here in Helping Parents Heal or at the conference. And we are just so grateful for everything that he does for all of us. I want to just tell you a little bit more about him and some of the books that he's written as well. He's a former emergency room physician, author, speaker, and Shining Light parent whose extraordinary experiences have profoundly touched the hearts of many around the world. During his years serving in the emergency room, Dr. O'Driscoll witnessed countless remarkable spiritual experiences surrounding death, dying, and the continuation of consciousness. These events deeply transformed his understanding of life, love, and what awaits us beyond this physical world. Following the passing of his beloved daughter, Rachel, Dr. O'Driscoll's connection to the spirit world became even more personal and profound. Through signs, spiritual experiences, and ongoing communication, he has come to know that our children remain close and that love continues eternally. Dr. O'Driscoll is the author of several inspiring books, including Not Yet, The Unanswered Prayer, The 11th Hour, and Zen's Garden, that he may be speaking a little bit about tonight, which is a work of fiction. Through his writing and speaking, he brings comfort, hope, and healing to countless Shining Light parents and others seeking reassurance about the continuity of life. And I just want to say that Irene was rewatching some videos of Dr. Raymond Moody. He's spoken to us several times, and he's such a sweetheart. But he frequently mentions that Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll is his inspiration for really believing that there is life after life. I think he already knew it, but it's so inspiring for him to have another um, doctor, physician believe exactly what he does, I think. So, anyway, without further ado, please join me and Irene in welcoming wonderful Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll. Welcome, Dr. Jeff.
Thank you for having me there and being here. I'm so grateful to be with such fine people.
Well, thank you. And I I know that everyone is really interested to hear a little bit about your life experience. I know that we're going to talk about Rachel a little bit later, but first of all, I think that the first thing that would be great, in case anyone hasn't heard your story with Jeffrey Olsen, who will be speaking to us on Thursday, actually, he's also one of our keynote speakers. Maybe you could tell a little bit about what happened in that emergency room with Jeffrey Olsen that kind of woke you up to a lot of all of this spiritual side of our existence. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
I can, and if you don't mind, I'll start a little bit before Jeff Olson because I I remember as a teenager uh, driving a car, a Volkswagen Bug, much too fast on a windy, dark country road with two friends in the car, and none of us were wearing seat belts. And we were going around these corners, and a voice spoke to me. Uh, it wrapped itself around me and communicated with me and said, "You have to slow down." And it was really strange because I was in a very rebellious time in my life. I wouldn't have listened to my parents. I certainly wouldn't have listened to law enforcement. I've joked that if God had been sitting in the seat next to me, I wouldn't have listened. But something about that voice resonated with my soul, and I slowed down. I went around the next corner and crashed head on into a Cadillac. And there was a lot of damage to the cars, but there was nobody was injured. And in retrospect, I think if I had not slowed down, if I had not heard that voice, I might have died that night. And I had those experiences starting in my teenage years, maybe even earlier that I don't remember. And I think they started when I was just before my 12th birthday, when my older brother was killed in a farm accident. And so fast forward a couple of decades, and I'm having these experiences on a fairly common, regular basis. They're still special and powerful, but they're not unusual for me by the time I'm in the emergency department. And one nurse in the emergency department who had similar experiences, she somehow managed to get me to talk about mine. She kind of pried it out of me and got me to talk about it. And she was the only person in the department that knew that I had these kind of experiences. And one night she came to me during a busy shift in the emergency department and she said, "You have to come to the trauma room." I said, "Why?" And she said, "She's there. You have to come. She's there." I said, "Who's there?" And she goes, "His wife. She's there. You have to come." And then I understood what she was talking about because we had been notified about this person who'd been horribly injured in a car crash in southern Utah, a couple hundred miles away. We knew that his wife and his 14-month-old son had died in the crash. The 7-year-old son was not injured badly. And so when she said his wife is there in the trauma room, it dawned on me what she was saying. So I went with her to down to the trauma suite. Mind you, there were other physicians on staff there. There was another ER physician or two. There was a trauma surgeon. They were there ready to take care of Jeff Olsen. So I was not his doctor. I didn't have any responsibility for his care. But I went down to the trauma room with this nurse, and I walked into the trauma room, and we stood there, and there were people all around Jeff Olsen doing things. And suddenly I was aware of his wife, who was standing in the air above the gurney, observing what was going on. And I'd never met before. I didn't know who they were, but that at that instant, I knew exactly who it was. And it was like the whole room kind of got quiet and things slowed down for me. Everybody else was doing their jobs. And like I said, I didn't have any responsibility for Jeff Olson's medical care, so that wasn't an issue. And it got quiet for me and things slowed down. And then Tamara, Jeff's deceased wife, who had just died in the accident 200 miles away and her body was still there, uh, expressed to me profound gratitude for the care that her husband was receiving. And I didn't realize it at the moment, but the nurse I was standing next to was having the same experience. The one that came and got me and drugged me down to the trauma room, she was having the same experience that she later shared with me. I walked over and I looked down at Jeff Olsen. He was unconscious. He was medicated and unconscious. And I looked at his leg and I remember checking the pulse in his foot and either thinking to myself or saying out loud, oh, yeah, he's going to lose the leg. I just knew he was going to lose the leg. I mean, I had a pretty good idea from a medical perspective, but I had this deeper understanding that he was going to lose his leg. And while I was looking down at him on the gurney, I could still see his wife standing behind me in the air because I could see in all directions at the same time. And it was just this profound peace, and in the midst of all the activity of the trauma suite and everybody doing everything they were doing, for me, it was this profound peace. After a brief interaction with Jeff Olsen, I walked over to the other end of the room, pulled off my shoe covers and my gown, and walked back out into the rest of the emergency department to finish my shift and went home, never expecting to see Jeff Olsen again. As incredible as that experience was, it wasn't horribly unusual for me. So I just went on with my job, finished my shift, went home. I wrote a sentence in my journal that night about this experience with this guy and how powerful it was. And then about, I don't know, 6 weeks or so later, I think, this same nurse came and started tugging on my arm the way she had that night that Jeff Olsen came to the trauma room. And she goes, we have to go tell him. I said, what are you talking about? We have to go tell him about our experience. Because she knew what my experience was and I knew hers. I said, no, I don't. I don't need to go tell him anything. And she goes, yeah, we need to. And I said, listen, if you want to go tell a perfect stranger about your spiritual experiences, be my guest, but I don't feel any obligation to do that. But like a good nurse, she drugged me kicking and screaming up to Jeff Olsen's room. He'd been transferred to a different hospital by then for insurance purposes. He was at the neighboring hospital at the university. And so we went up there. And I didn't say much. The nurse did most of the talking, and she told him about the experiences we'd had, how we'd experienced the presence of his wife. And he asked what she'd said, and I shared that she'd shared how her profound gratitude for the care that he'd received. And and Jeff Olsen started to cry at that point. He broke down, and he proceeded to share the experience he'd had at the scene of the accident when he'd left his body and risen up above the scene of the accident in some profound, inexplicable light. And he'd met Tamara in that light. And she said to him, you have to go back and raise our son, because one of their sons had lived and the other one had passed. And he was forced to re-enter his body. And I'll let him tell you all that on Thursday and stuff. But that's how Jeff Olsen and I met. And we've been friends now for over 29 years since that night.
It's such an incredible story, and I always I smile when I hear it, which is terrible to say, but I know that Tamara is happy, healthy, and home, as well as Griffin. And we are the ones that are having the hard time here on this side in our Earth school. But I wanted to just go back to what you said, and I should have said something about it before you started your story. You are a Shining Light sibling as well. And I think that because of the fact that there are so many parents on here who have children who have passed, who have siblings who are here on this side, it would be very helpful for them to hear how your spiritual awakening kind of happened when that happened, when your brother transitioned. Could you tell a little bit about that and maybe explain how it helped you understand more about where our kids go and how they are?
Well, I I didn't think that my brother's passing had much impact on me. Um, we went on with our life. I saw how it impacted my parents. My parents never spoke about my brother after he passed. You know, it's a generation, it's a different generation now. And for me, it's very different. When my daughter passed, we talk about my daughter all the time in our family, my wife and I and our kids and stuff. But my parents never spoke about Stan after he passed. And it wasn't until sometime after I had that experience driving that Volkswagen Bug that night that I realized that the voice that was speaking to me was my brother, because that is the only voice I would have listened to. I told you how rebellious I was, that I would not have listened to any other voice. And it took me years before I realized, oh, that's who was talking to me that night. And it was this profound realization. 20 years after my brother passed, he came to me. I was wide awake, beautiful, bright, sunny day. He came to me in full form and he said, "You have to go talk with our mother because there's things she's never told you about my death." And you can imagine that got my attention. So I went and sat down with my mother, just the two of us. Dad was gone somewhere. And so we had the house to ourselves and we just chatted and visited for a while. And she told me that day for the very first time, she said, before Stan died, I always knew where you were in the house because I could hear you singing. When your brother passed away, you stopped singing. And that was the first time I realized how deeply his departure had impacted me. And I've had a number of encounters with Stan over the years, and I think he has tutored me many times in things spiritual.
That's a beautiful answer, and I just think it's so important for parents to realize that these days people do talk about their kids. At least everyone that I know talks about their kids, and if it makes anyone around them uncomfortable, and that is sometimes the case with family and friends, find somebody else to talk about your kids with, because and for kids to be able to do the same thing, because boy, oh boy, first of all, it really helps us heal. But second of all, they love it when we talk about them. So I'm sure that that voice that you were hearing is and was Stan, and that he's still with you. And you mentioned Rachel a couple times, and this has been very recent that she's transitioned. And I would love for you to tell everyone about how beautiful Rachel is, what her job was here on Earth, which was incredible, about her beautiful family, and about how her transition has impacted your spiritual understanding and connection with the other side. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. Um, Rachel was a profoundly spiritual person, much more so than I ever realized. And in fact, she read my book, Not Yet. And I think she read most of it while she was at work. She was a newborn intensive care nurse who worked in the NICU. And sometimes at night, when things were quiet, I guess there was time to read a little bit. And she texted me one night and told me that she was reading my book. And she said, uh, before I read your book, I didn't think I'd had any spiritual experiences. But after I read your book, I realized I've had many spiritual experiences. Because so often we have these profound experiences and they go by and we don't recognize them, or we don't appreciate them, or we attribute some, and after she sent me that text message, I thought, oh, maybe I wrote the book for her. It made me feel so good. So she was a NICU nurse, and she made me so proud one day. We were talking just out of the blue, and she told me about when she had really sick baby that she was concerned about, a really premature baby. And even in the NICU, there's some that are sick and there's some that are really sick. And when she had a very sick baby, she'd sit down with the parents and she'd tell them, I want you to know that I love your child and I'm going to take good care of them. And it made me so proud. I thought, oh, that must mean so much to those parents. In fact, after Rachel passed, I got emails and messages through social media from parents of some of the children she'd taken care of, even from parents of children that didn't survive. And I remember one mother, she said, I might have made it, or my child might have made it without Rachel being there, but I wouldn't have. And she talked about how Rachel would sit down and explain everything and reassure them. I got messages from one mother who their child had been so ill, and they used to make these kind of bedazzled caps and headbands and stuff to try and have something personal on their child. And Rachel was covering a night shift. This was not even her primary baby. She was the covering nurse on a night shift, but she knew the child was going for a procedure the next morning, a very serious heart procedure, and couldn't wear these special things that the parents had made. So what she did was she put the child in one of the hospital gowns that was acceptable for her to go to this procedure. And then she took another one of the hospital gowns and she cut it up and she made this special cap for the baby that was acceptable for her to wear to go to have this procedure. And this mother told me how much that meant to her. And she later sent me a picture of that. And her child didn't survive. But my wife, who's also a very spiritual person, had a vision after Rachel passed where she saw Rachel being welcomed by these children that she'd cared for who were just too sick to survive, and being reunited with them. And I can imagine how much that meant to Rachel, because some of the times after a child would graduate from the NICU and go home, she would keep in touch with the family. I know she went at least to one child's naming. They had a blessing ceremony for this child, and Rachel showed up. She bought a gift and showed up because they meant so much to her. And after she'd been a NICU nurse for about 8 years, she'd gained enough experience. She became a life flight nurse, an aeromedical NICU flight nurse. And she just absolutely loved that job. She had trained for 6 months. She'd gone on like 60 transports. She had just been certified to be a full-fledged flight nurse, NICU nurse, without having a proctor or a mentor with her on a flight. And then she was diagnosed, and she never flew again.
Oh, Dr. Jeff, this is so emotional for me because I followed her journey on Facebook and with you, and such a beautiful, vibrant, beautiful young woman. And right before the meeting, we were just talking about the fact that we know that Morgan and and Carly, as well as Rachel, are all, they probably have their arms locked watching all of us tonight. And I feel that it's the same way for all of our kids who are here this evening, that they're all so excited that we're getting together and talking about them. And Rachel truly is an incredible soul. And I know that you said that Sheila had this experience with her being welcomed home by all of these NICU babies. Um, have you continued to communicate with her since she passed? Do you have different signs that you've had from her?
Yes. Um, about 8 weeks after Rachel passed, I was laying on my bed one beautiful sunny morning. The sun was streaming through the doorway into the bedroom, and all of a sudden, Rachel just walked in through the doorway, and the sun was shining around her head and shoulders, and it was so beautiful because the last few months of her life, her cancer made her so hot all the time that she almost always had her hair up in a bun, and she had one of these neck fans on to try and keep cool. But when she came to me several weeks after her passing that day, her beautiful long auburn hair was down over her shoulders, the way it was the day she got married before she went to the venue to have her hair done up in preparation for the wedding. And she had her signature smile, just this beautiful, gleaming smile. And she just stood there, and I experienced her presence. It was just so amazing. And finally, because I'd had enough experiences in the past with different people, I knew that it's okay sometimes to ask a question. And I asked her, I said, "Do you have a message for me?" And she said, "I love you, Dad. I'll always love you." And that was her message. I mean, it, it couldn't be better or more profound. It's so simple and yet so beautiful. And so let me tell you, you mentioned this book, Zen's Garden. Let me turn the blurring off on my screen for a second, because then I think it'll show this better. This is the book, Zen's Garden.
Yes.
And this, by the way, is the only work of fiction that Raymond Moody has ever endorsed. Um, so I was writing this book a couple of years before Rachel's diagnosis, before I knew anything about it. And the book is fiction, but it's about an emergency physician in the emergency department trying to figure out, trying to understand the experiences he has in the ER that science can't explain. So I know something about that. I didn't have to do any research to write this book, okay? Um, and the inciting event that sends this emergency physician on his spiritual journey is the unexpected death of his adult daughter. And a few years after his daughter passes away, he's sitting one day talking with his wife, and he just gets emotional. And he says, "God, I love that child." And I remember the day I wrote that line, I broke down and I cried. And I sat there in the chair and I looked at the screen and I just wept. And I thought, why is this so personal? Why is this such a visceral feeling to me? And then the book was all written, it was edited, ready to go to the publisher, and then Rachel got diagnosed. And about 3 months later or so, I remembered that day that I wrote that line, and I thought, oh, I thought I was writing fiction. Somehow my soul knew.
Oh,
And since then, I've gone back and I found Rachel throughout the book. She's in the book all throughout the book, and just in ways that just shocked me. And so after she died, I picked up the manuscript one day and I thought, am I even going to finish? I wasn't even sure I wanted to publish it. And I didn't have a title for the book. I'd been working on it. I had a working title, but I knew it wasn't the right one. And I picked it up and I thought, should I publish this? And if I do, what am I going to title it? And at that moment, I heard my daughter's voice. Rachel said, "Zen's Garden." And then I realized the name of the daughter that passed away in the book was Zen. The main character's daughter's name was Zen. And I thought I was writing a book about the journey of the emergency physician in his spiritual path. But what I was really writing was how Zen was cultivating his spiritual nature from the other side of the veil. He was her garden. She was cultivating that spirituality in him. And I thought, oh, that is the perfect title.
Oh, what a beautiful
Wrote a
title.
manuscript and published it.
What a beautiful title and what a beautiful book as well. And I'm glad that you have spoken a little bit about it. You have so many books that are so helpful to parents. The other ones are mostly nonfiction. I think this is the only work of fiction that you've published. Is that right?
I've written 2 novels and I wrote a series of 6 children's books.
Oh, children's books as well. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's not in your bio. So
No, no, that's
anyway,
okay.
but I know that Irene is going to get a lot of questions in the chat box because I know that so many people can identify with you. But before we do that, I'd like to ask one last question so that people can start putting their questions in the chat box. Many parents struggle with fear, doubt, or guilt after their child's passing. What wisdom would you share with them from both your medical and spiritual perspectives?
Let go of the guilt. It doesn't do you any, it doesn't serve you, and it's not deserved. I was at an International Association of Near-Death Studies conference near Philadelphia several years ago, and the conference was wrapping up. People were leaving, and I was sitting on a couch by myself. And this woman walked over and asked if she could sit down, and I said, "Yes, certainly sit down." And and she looked at me for a minute, and she goes, "Are you a medium?" And before I could answer, she goes, "Oh, of course you are. I just heard you speak." And she'd heard me talk about some of the experiences I'd had with people that are deceased. I never thought of myself as a medium, but that's what she said. And the thing that was really stunning to me was she was sitting on my left. And as she was sitting on my left, her son stood on my right hand side. And while she's talking to me, her son said, "Tell her not to feel guilty anymore. Tell her it wasn't her fault." And this woman gave me permission to share this, which I was planning on doing at the Helping Parents Heal conference later. I may reiterate this at the conference in August, but the woman is Nell Rose Foreman, and her son is Jack. And she's been to Helping Parents Heal at least a couple of times. When my 40 years after my brother died, he came to me, and I was in meditation, and he came and he touched me on the arm. And when he touched me, the building I was in just dissolved, and I was in this beautiful paradisiacal heavenly place. I think a lot of people would call it heaven. And he took me on a tour around this place, and he introduced me to people, and he explained things. And in the process, he showed me my life in review. And he showed me how on the days where my life had dramatically changed course, he had been there to help direct that change. And then he showed me the day that he passed, but not from my perspective. He showed it to me from the perspective of my parents. And I felt all of the agony and the sadness and the sorrow, the resentment, the frustration. I felt everything that my parents felt that day in this profound, overwhelming, accelerated experience that was given to me by my brother. And then he looked at me and he said, "Go tell our parents not to be sad anymore. Tell them I'm okay and I don't want them to be sad." And he later told me, he gave me a message for my fathers, tell him not, say, don't tell dad not to feel guilty. Because the way that it happened was my brother, when he was 15, came to my dad and he said, "I want to buy this new pair of boots." And they were like $125. And this was in like 1978, I think. So It was, no, 73. So $125 for a pair of boots was kind of posh. And Dad said, well, I can't buy that. And my brother said, no, 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 Dad, I'm going to go get a job on the farm at the other end of the county and buy it. And so he went and got this job, and that was where the accident happened that took his life. And when the ecclesiastical leader drove the 20 miles to my father's office to give him the horrible news that day, my dad came back from lunch. Here's this man sitting in his office. Imagine the feelings that go through you when you see that. And the man looked up and said, there's been an accident. Stan's been injured. And Dad says, how bad is it? And the man said, he's dead. And I never knew this until this day, 40 years later. My dad, when he heard the news, he said, my son's dead over a pair of cowboy boots. And he'd been carrying that guilt for 40 years. And when Stan came to me, he said, tell Dad not to feel guilty. It's not his fault. So that's what I would say to any parent who harbors guilt or a sense of blame or anything of that nature. Your loved ones don't want you to feel that. It doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve you. Let it go.
That's a beautiful thing to say to all of these parents because you're right. They are happy, healthy, and home, and he's completely fine. We're the ones that need help. And thank heavens people like you are here to help us. Thank you, Dr. Jeff. I know that Irene has questions in the chat box. So Irene, take it
Sure.
over.
Yes, and we'll have to send you the chat. There's just such wonderful comments about Rachel and about being a NICU nurse, and it's really nice. Um, yes, so the first question, Lainey's asking, I have a living 7-year-old son who will soon ask questions about where his twin brother is now. Do you have any guidance on explaining the afterlife, as the people on this call probably conceive of it non-dogmatically, in an age appropriate way for a child?
Oh, um, my my granddaughter Eloise had her 7th birthday just before her mother passed away, and she had a little brother who was just approaching his 4th birthday, and I wasn't there at the time, but my wife was, and she told me that on the day before Rachel passed, we went to the oncologist, and then we came home to my house for hospice. And her husband, Todd, went from the oncologist's office to his home to get the kids and then come to my house where Rachel was going to be in hospice. And he called his kids over, and my wife was there, and she heard him explain to his children, Mommy's going to heaven soon, and she's going to be all right. She's going to miss you, but she's going to be all right. And I think it's really important when we're talking to children of that age about where our loved ones are going, that we make sure they know that they're well, they're happy, that they're not in pain anymore, not mental pain, not physical pain. They're not suffering with substance use or suicidal thoughts, that they finally have a relief from those horrible, difficult things. And 2 months ago, my mother passed. And I was sitting at her bedside, my brother and I, when she said, I don't want you two to be sad when I go. Will you promise that you won't be sad? And I said, Mom, we won't be sad. We'll miss you, but we won't be sad because we know where you're going and things are okay. and that you're going to be with your son that you haven't seen in 53 years, and with your husband that's been gone for 3 years, and with your father that you haven't seen in 40 and plus years, and your mother and two of her siblings. Um, it's hard to manage the sadness, but it's important to remember that our loved ones are happy and they're in a place of peace and comfort.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
by the way, Irene,
Yeah.
Jeff Olsen and his son Spencer authored a beautiful children's book titled, I think it's titled Mother, Where Are You?
Yes, we have it on our website for a recommended children's book. Yes,
Yes.
it is a beautiful book. I think, Elizabeth, they spoke at the conference about that, didn't they?
They did. They spoke
Several years
about
ago?
the book,
Yeah.
and not only that, but we have a whole section on the Helping Parents Heal website that has children's books that we recommend to be able to kind of explain that. So, if you all would like to take a look at that, please do so. But your answer was beautiful as well. Thank
Yes,
you, Dr.
thank you.
Jeff.
I
Let's
have a
see.
beautiful picture of Eloise just a few weeks after her mother passed away, and she's dressed up in her mother's clothes, and she has a beautiful smile on her face. And she said, "They smell like mom," the clothes.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, thank
Make
you.
sure your children uh, hear their loved one's name often. Um, Make sure they understand it's okay to say their loved one's name. When Eloise was rocking in the hammock with me after Rachel passed, and in the backyard, and I said, Ellie, I used to rock in this same hammock with your mother when she was your age. And her face just lit up. She goes, "Can you tell me more stories about my mom?"
Oh,
So children love to hear the names of their loved ones. Make sure that twin is remembered.
thank you.
Goody.
Jackie is asking, do you think more doctors and medical professionals are starting to speak and share more openly about what they see and experience with those transitioning and the death of the physical body while the soul lives on and communicates with them and us?
I don't know whether more are talking about it or whether I'm just more aware of some that are talking about it because of the circle of people that I associate with. But I recently wrote and published a paper on near-death experiences that was published a few months ago in the Journal of Near-Death Studies. And one of the things that I recommend near the end of the paper is organizing a nationwide registry of people that have near-death experiences so that it can be studied more widely. Uh, when you actually quantify the people that have these kind of experiences, it's actually much more frequent than realized. And when we start studying it and talking about it, then we'll be more inclined to to speak about it with an unbiased, accepting view that helps people who have experienced it.
That would be fascinating. That would be wonderful if it does come to be. Maria is asking, Dr. Jeff, just wondering if your intuition and heightened senses have expanded since your daughter Rachel's transition.
I don't think so. Um, Sometimes my intuition and experiences diminish somewhat when in the process of grieving. Sometimes grief is an obstacle to those experiences. For some people, it opens up those doors, and their experiences are more frequent. Um, for me, I think grief in some ways is a distraction that keeps us from being as spiritually connected as we'd like to be. But it's different for everybody. I've had experiences with Rachel. When my mother-in-law transitioned, I was in the room with her, and her husband, whom I was very close to, came and got her, and they left together. And I experienced that. Um, and I'm very grateful for those kind of experiences, but I'd like to have more with regards to some of my own family, I think.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think we all feel the same way. Stephanie is asking, I do believe that our loved ones on the other side are okay, as all mediums say. However, if I could have a message directly from my loved one instead of through a medium, it would be a huge relief, as there would be no room for any doubt at any time. Any tips on how to be able to receive messages directly?
Yes, absolutely. Jeff Olsen and I were teaching a workshop down in Sedona once, and we asked, "Does anybody here feel like they've never had a spiritual experience?" And this one woman raised her hand, and she was certain she hadn't. And Jeff pressed her on it, and she was sure she hadn't. And he kept pressing her, and she kept saying no. And I'm kind of like, Jeff, give her a break. She said no, leave her alone. And so we were going on with the workshop, and all of a sudden, this woman raises her hand, and she had had a son pass away, and she goes, um, my son came to me once, and he gave me a message. And Jeff Olson and I looked at each other, and we go, that might be a spiritual experience. You might want to write that one down and keep it in your head. Um, and I had that. I had an experience with a client once, because I have clients now around the world in at least a dozen countries. And this one woman, I asked her, I said, "Have you had any experiences with your son since he passed?" And she said, "Oh, no, no, I don't see things. I don't, that doesn't happen to me." And she just completely dismissed it. And we went on with the conversation for a few minutes. And then I asked her again. I said, "So have you had any experiences with your son?" And she goes, "No, I don't hear things like that. Other people hear things, but I don't do that." I said, "Okay, I get it." And then a few minutes later, I felt the third time to ask again, but with different language. And I said, since your son passed, have you ever felt him close?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah. Yeah, he came to me." And I said, "Well, is he okay?" And she goes, "Yes, he's fine. I know he's fine." I said, Does did you feel his life? She goes, "His love." And she goes, "Yes, absolutely. That's how I knew who it was." And she shared a few more things about the experience. And I told her, I says, "Well, next time you think about whether you've had a spiritual experience with your son, or whether if somebody asked you about that, try using different language. Try saying it this way: my son loved me so much, he came to me after he passed, and he expressed his love to me and communicated to me that he was well, that he was happy." I said, "Is that an accurate description of what happened?" She goes, "Yeah." So this is my suggestion to the question that was asked: is don't get caught up in not receiving what you're expecting, and instead internalize and accept the messages that come, even if they're not the way you expect them. Because we tend to communicate with what we see and what we hear. Spirit tends to communicate with what we feel and what we know, even if we can't describe how we know it. When you feel your loved one close, they are there. And if you don't hear words, you get messages anyway, because you have feelings about them being close. Let the feelings be the message.
Beautiful. Thank you. And we have one more question, but I just want to read what Kathleen wrote, because it's so beautiful and we all feel this. Dr. Jeff is wonderful. Rachel is beautiful. Your words are so healing. Thank you. And that's just, we all feel that. And I have one last question, and then I'll turn it back to Elizabeth. Amber is asking, can you share what you do with clients, and do you teach after death communication?
Um, yes, teach it, maybe not using those words, but essentially, yes. I work with people and often have a conversation, and sometimes the conversation goes for quite a while, and they understand, oh, this is what you're supposed to tell them. This is the message you're supposed to share. And I'll share it. Sometimes I'm comfortable sharing, sometimes I'm reluctant. But yes, I talk with people about how to still, how to quiet their mind, how to open their heart, how to trust what they're experiencing, how to learn to write things down and act upon those impressions or thoughts or feelings after you've written them down, how to be uh, more willing, because we're all uh, comfortable with somebody having a profound musical gift. For example, some people have this amazing gift, but if you want to play in the concert with the symphony at Carnegie Hall, you got to practice for about 40,000 hours in addition to the gift, because the gift isn't enough. And yet we sometimes think that spiritual gifts come upon us whole cloth, ready to be exercised without any effort on our part. But that's not how it works. It takes sometimes years or decades of slow, consistent practicing of simple principles to grow into it and experience it over time. And we have to be patient and learn how it goes. And
Beautiful.
it's different for every person. It's okay to talk with somebody else and get some ideas or feedback from them. You can even try some of their techniques, but you have to realize it may be different for you. It may be very different.
Thank you. Wonderful. It's just been amazing. And I'll turn it back to Elizabeth for the few minutes that are left. You're muted, Elizabeth.
There we go. Sorry about that. So, thank you for that answer. I think it's really important for people to understand that it's important for all of us to practice this communication with our children in spirit because it doesn't come naturally. It's not something that we are necessarily born with, but we're all able to do it. And they're working just as hard as we are. They're learning from everybody who is there how to communicate with us. And if we're also doing the same thing and meeting halfway in the middle, it makes it easier for all of us. So thank you for telling parents that. And I think that one last question that I'd like to ask is for the parents on here that are newly navigating this journey of having a child transition, what message of hope is the most important that you think would be healing for parents who are on here?
I guess the most profound message is the one that Rachel shared with me when she came to visit me that day and told me that she loved me and that she always would. Um, I one day, several years ago, um, I was in my house by myself, and I was walking from one room to another when I was overwhelmed by this inexpressible, infinite, ineffable love. It was the most profound experience I had ever had. There was no way to describe it. It wasn't something I had earned or deserved or expected. It was completely a profound gift. And I fell to my knees and I wept because I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to ever go away. And after a few minutes, I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am your mother." And I believe in an infinite, divine, feminine presence in the next realm. And I experience with that divine being. And I think it's a model and an example for all of us to take in and experience and to share with others.
That's a beautiful answer. And I just want to say that my shared death experience with the Morgan, the one thing that I took away from it that was the most important of everything else was that love never dies. And the love that we have for our children has just changed form. It's no longer shown in a physical way, but it's shown every single day, every single minute they are with us. Whenever we want them to be with us, they're here right by our side. And they're all so excited that we've gotten together this evening to be able to speak with you. And I know that Jeff, you had a very, very busy day today, and you fit us in, and we're so grateful for that. And we're thrilled that you're going to be at the conference with us. I know that this is going to be the best conference ever. I don't know how we're going to beat the other conferences that we've had because they've all just been so incredible with these kids.
But they hold me.
Okay, give me a few more minutes, buddy. This is my grandson. You wait for me out in the other room, okay? Close it.
And we're going to let you go to be able to be with your grandkids. But thank you so much for being with us.
Yes.
And we always ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and good evening. So if you all would like to do so.
Can I say one thing?
Oh, yes, please.
Absolutely.
I would be delighted if you ordered my book, but don't order it from me on my website because I don't have very many books in my shelf, and you'll be waiting forever because I'll have to order books and then ship them. So if you order books from me, just order them directly on Amazon, especially if you get free shipping. So I'm just a warning because I don't want to be inundated with orders and I don't have any books in my house.
Yes, I typed in the chat to order on Amazon earlier.
Thank you, Dr. Jeff.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you, Jeff.
So much.
Thank you,
Dr.
Jeff.
Beyond blessed. Love
Thank
you.
you very much.
Amazing.
Can't wait to
Thank
see you in
you.
Arizona.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,